back to my channel. I am so happy I am back to connect with you guys. I haven't been able to do any like sit down talking type videos because I have been traveling so much. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I was in Miami, Orlando, and I just got back from London. So I wanted to take advantage of these couple days that I am home because I am traveling yet again to chat with you guys and do like a fun video so I can connect with you a little bit more. So many of you wanted to hear a little bit about how I became an engineer, you know, how was my journey getting here, and I decided that today would be a perfect day to talk about that. But before I tell you my story, if you enjoyed the videos, please make sure you like and you subscribe. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, my journey growing up and how I became an engineer, my decisions, you know, everything that brought me from rags to riches, although I do not consider myself riches by any means, but I thought it was a cool way to say it. But anyway, so, you know, starting with my childhood, I was raised in Brazil, born and raised in Brazil. I am turning 44 next month. I know I don't even celebrate birthdays anymore, but I'm turning 44 next month. I arrived in the US when I was 24, so it's gonna be 20 years that I've been here in this amazing country. I'm so grateful. And but you know, I was raised in Brazil. My childhood was okay. We weren't poor, you know, financially we were okay. We were modest, you know, middle class. Didn't have anything extravagant. I think when I was a teenager, I had like 2 pairs of shoes, you know, and that was it. You know, but we did have food on the table. My parents always put money aside to give us the best education. That was a big concern for them. So, you know, in financial terms, our childhood was fine. I think emotionally was tougher. My parents are now happily married, you know, and I'm so glad they ended up together. But growing up, they separated many times. So if you think about how hard it is for a child to go through one divorce, I feel like we were going through a divorce once a year, maybe even sometimes twice a year. They got separated so many times, I couldn't even tell you how many, maybe 6, 7, I don't even know. So, you know, they would fight and they would decide that they wanted to separate, and then we would move, or I would move with my dad and my brother, and then we would get back to, they would get back together, and then they would decide 6 months later they were gonna separate, and then we would move out with my mom, or my dad would move out. I mean, we have gone through every single variation you can think of, and you know, that was tough. I think for a child, a divorce is the hardest thing you have to go through, and we just had to go through it over and over and over. So, you know, looking back, my brother, my sister, and I, we dealt with it in different ways. So I have 2 siblings. My brother is younger than me, so I'm 44, he's gonna turn 42. And then my youngest sister, she's 8 years younger than me. So when I think about when I was 14, my brother was 12, I remember when my parents fought, you know, I was always like really loud and I was always involved in everything. You know, I would break up the fights, I would get involved and push my dad back and separate my mom, whatever. My brother was very withdrawn, so he would go to his bedroom and he would like lock himself up, and he did not want to hear it. Like, he did not want to participate. I think the way he coped with it was trying to isolate himself from the problem, you know. And my sister was really young, so she was a child. I'm sure she absorbed all of the stress but didn't quite comprehend everything that was going on. But it was tough. I think by any standards, you know, there was alcohol involved, and you know, I don't want to get into a lot of detail because obviously it involves my parents, but I think for any kid it was a very tough situation. But I think all of us turned out all right. You know, when I think about everything I went through, I had every single excuse to do drugs, to not do well in school, to not become anything, to get into trouble and bad relationships. I mean, granted, I did have bad relationships, but I dealt with them. I mean, I will tell you about, I should do like a relationship video with my stories, and believe me, I have some stories. But I had every excuse to go the wrong way, and I just didn't. You know, the way I always thought about it was, I am gonna use the tough times as motivation to make me stronger, and I'm gonna make something of myself, and I'm gonna be a good person, you know. So I am sorry guys, this might come the wrong way, but when I see people that are like, you know, my parents were drug addicts and my dad was an alcoholic and my parents got divorced and that's why I do drugs and that's why I'm a troubled kid, I have a real hard time empathizing with that because I had some serious issues in my home that I don't want to talk about. But you know, I didn't let that define who I am, and I didn't let that define my future or who I was going to become. So I think sometimes, I think people a lot of times use bad things as crutches to justify their bad decisions. So I don't know if you guys watch The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, one of my guilty pleasures. So one of them, Erica Girardi, or Erica Jane, she said on an episode, you know, and I really identified with that. She said, you know, I don't like crybabies. You know, I had a tough childhood, I went through it, and I made something of myself, and I don't like people that cry. And I am the same way. It might sound like I'm kind of like an asshole, but to me, it's like, whatever. You know, your parents were on drugs. So what? Do you have to be on drugs too? Use that bad experience into something positive in your life and turn a bad into a good. You know, I don't think there's any reason for anybody to continue a bad pattern. Something sucked in your life, then freaking change it. You know, so that's how I think. I do not mean to offend anybody, but I feel like I went through some intense emotional distress. I had horrendous fights in my house on the daily that sometimes involved knives, that involved alcohol, that involved, you know, many bad things. And I dealt with it, and it sucked at the time, but I never let that derail me from what I really wanted to do with my life. So that's my lesson number one for you guys. Don't be a crybaby. You know, if things suck, then freaking do something to change it. Do not let that ruin the rest of your life. You know, be strong, like be a badass. Anyway, so that's what my childhood was like. And then, you know, I became a teenager. I was always very good in school. School for me was always very important. Doing well in life was important. My mom always ingrained in my brain that I needed to be an independent woman. A lot of her troubles her troubles with my dad and separating was that she depended on him. She was a housewife. You know, Brazilian guys are very chauvinistic, very macho. They don't like their women to work. You know, they're like the gods, right? And the women exist merely to serve them. I mean, that's kind of how Brazilian culture is. If you go to Brazil right now and you turn on the TV, it's all women showing their butts because we need to make men happy. So it is such a chauvinistic culture that it really disgusts me in many ways. So anyway, my mom always told me, like, I do not want you to grow up and have to ask your husband for a lipstick, because that was her life. You know, if she needed money, what for? Why do you have to spend this much? Why do you need a pair of shoes? Why do you need makeup? So, you know, I really kind of like have that as a value for me. Even if Scott became a millionaire tomorrow and I didn't need to work anymore and I stopped working, I know that I can work at any point in my life at any time. So if I was to divorce from my husband and I was not working at the time because he was rich, I would need him because I can still find a banging job, making very good money and taking care of myself. So, you know, that is something important that I try to pass to my daughter every day. Yes, it's great to have a rich husband. Yes, it is great to have a guy that takes care of you, but it is not great to depend on that man for every single thing you need in your life, because he puts you at their mercy, you know, and I always want to be able to pick up and leave whenever the hell I feel like. So anyway, so I always did really good in school. I started college in Brazil. I decided to be a chemical engineer because I wanted to have a good paying job. My decision for my career was very rational. I had passions, you know, I loved ancient history, I loved interior design. I could have pursued those things as careers in college, but I decided not to, because I said, you know, if I graduate in history, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be a teacher for the rest of my life. Nothing wrong with being a teacher, one of the most honorable jobs on the planet that I respect the most, but we all know that teachers do not make any money. They are so under-recognized and undervalued for what they do, and I wanted something that was going to guarantee me a good living for the rest of my life. So I said, I'm going to pick up a job, and I researched and I looked at engineering, which engineering fields paid the most, and chemical engineering was one of the best ones in terms of pay. I was always very good at math and I liked science. So I said, beautiful, perfect match of my talents with a good career. And you know, my passions, interior design or history, I can do that on the side. You know, once I have a good paying job, I can travel to Rome, or I can go to Egypt and then study ancient history and do that for fun, but always have a good source of income. And I say the same thing to my daughter. When you pick your college degree, you're gonna pick something that's gonna make you money, because I had to get loans and do all kinds of stuff to get through college. If I did not have a good paying job, I'd be screwed right now. I'd be paying all of these loans and I'd have no money, right? I wouldn't have a good job. So I think you guys, advice I'm giving to you is what I tell my daughter. Be smart about what you pick for your college degree. Anything fun you can do on the side. I cannot tell you how many people I see that graduate in degrees that are kind of worthless and that are, you know, working retail or doing many other things when they should be making 5 times the money with a college degree. So that's kind of how I operate. So that's why I picked chemical engineering. I started school in Brazil at the Federal University in Rio, and then I saw that the older friends that I had were graduating and nobody was getting jobs. You know, there were no jobs in Brazil, and in Brazil you have to have connections to get a job. You have to know the director of the company, you know, you need to be dating the manager, and I had 0 connections. And I was like, what the hell? My dad is an economist, completely different area, couldn't help me with anything. So I said, I have to change my life. I have to do something to change my destiny, because I do not want this to be my future. So I started looking at ways to get out of the country. And I had come to Orlando once with a boyfriend, and you know, to go to Disney, and I just fell in love with the US. And I feel like at that time I had a premonition. I am very superstitious, but when I stepped in Orlando, I had a feeling, and I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. Like, this is my place. So anyway, I started saving money. I got a job as a hostess of like you know, it's kind of like a Madison Square Garden in Brazil called Metropolitan. It's like a fancy place for concerts, and I became a hostess there. So I'd go to school during the day, and I'd be a hostess for concerts at night. And I saved every single penny I made to come to the US. So with the money I saved, I was able to buy my tickets. And you know, when I got here, I had $200 in my pocket and many dreams. So I had no money. I arrived here as an immigrant, as a tourist visa, so I was illegal. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and my dream was to study here. So once we got here, the first thing I did was go to University of Central Florida, where they offered an English program for people from other countries. You know, it wasn't a college degree, it was just like a little English classes. And if I took that, I was able to change my visa to a student visa. So that's what I did. I became a student, and I was able to stay in the US. So I studied English there, and you know, I thought, okay, worst case scenario, if I cannot stay, I am gonna go back to Brazil and I'm gonna be fluent in English, and this is gonna help me find a better job. So while I was there one day, I saw a pamphlet about their engineering program, and I was like, oh my God, what a dream would it be for me to graduate with an engineering degree in the US. So I looked at the application, and I had to do so much stuff, and recommendation letters and essays. And it looked like overwhelming. It looked like a distant dream. But I said, you know what? I'm not gonna let this deter me. I am gonna make this happen. I started talking to my teachers in my English classes for recommendations. I started, you know, looking at how to write essays. You know, and that time there was no Google. You know, at that time, if you wanted to learn anything or look at examples of essays, you'd have to go to a library and check out books, you know, and that's exactly what I did. And I made it happen. And I remember when I did the application, I got accepted, and when I went to talk to the counselor, I asked him, I said, look, I've heard about the honors program. What do I have to do to get into the honors program? He never offered it to me. I asked for it. And this is something that I tell my daughter all the time. Don't wait for people to take care of you. Don't wait for people to do things for you to reach your dreams. You have to go after them. Like, nobody's gonna go out of their way to help you. I'm sorry, it's the reality, you know? So I said, I wanna do it. What do I have to do to get to the honors program? And he said, you're gonna have to take this test because you don't have SAT scores. So I had to take the SAT, because in Brazil that doesn't exist. And he said, if you score really well, we will get you into the honors program. And that's exactly what happened. I took the test, I did really well, and I qualified to get into the honors program. So I got into the honors program. I lost years of studying when I started school here in the US because they did not accept all of my credits from Brazil. So I had already gone to college in Brazil for a few years and they accepted a portion of them. So it delayed me quite a bit. I graduated as an engineer. I was almost 30 years old, guys. So I went to college. Those were very, very tough times. I had no money. There were months where the rent was due in 3 days and I had no idea how I was gonna get the money for the rent. I would do odd jobs. I would try to babysit. I would try to do like hosting gigs. I knew some Brazilian people in town that knew about, you know, these odd jobs. And somehow I really believe that God really took care of me. You know, in the times of need, I really believe that if you try really hard, if you go after it, when you are hopeless, God really kind of extends you a hand. You know, my mom used to say, God closes a door, but he opens 3 windows. And I really, really believe that because I tried so hard in those times of despair where I did not have a direction. I would feel like a door would open and show me the way, you know. So I always got by, guys. Always was honest, never did anything against the law. I always worked really hard and I got myself through, you know. So I went to school, I had my student visa, I was, you know, I got really good grades, I was in the honors program, so I was able to score a scholarship. So for my first few years, I had a scholarship to get me through because I wasn't really technically allowed to work in the US, and it was really rough. So during these times, you know, I came to the US with my boyfriend at the time. I broke up with him because he was an asshole. He was cheating on me. I'll tell you that on my tell-all relationship video later. But he was a jackass. I had my share of bad relationships and I just left him, went through some really tough times and had to make it on my own without a roommate because I would split everything with him in terms of expenses, right? So anyway, after that, I met my husband. He was so nice. And in 4 months that we were dating, he proposed to me. You know, he saw I was in a very tough situation, wasn't really able to get a decent job. You know, I didn't have a green card. So we got married. And then I was able to work in the US and get my green card. And that really helped a lot. But within a couple years of being married, I became pregnant. It was absolutely not planned. You know, life was already tough as it was, you guys. Trying to go to school, get a degree in engineering, no freaking money. You know, my husband had a decent job at the time. It was rough, you know. So when I got pregnant, I really became desperate. I was like, this is it. Like, what is gonna happen with my life? You know, how I don't have money for a babysitter. I cannot put my daughter in childcare. I'm gonna have to abandon my studies. I called my mom desperate, like, Mom, I have to finish school. Like, this is my salvation, you know? So my mom said, you know what? Your sister, who was a teenager at the time, is not hanging out with the best people around here. I've been trying to find a way to get her out of this crowd. So how about this? I will send your sister to the US. You will help her get through school and help her, you know, getting herself together and enrolling in school. And you can have her as a babysitter for free. She said it will be good for you and it will be good for her. So that's exactly what happened. My mom sent my sister here. And my sister really became my daughter's second mom. You know, while I was in school in class, she would take care of my daughter. Then I would take care of my daughter so she could go to school. My husband was working a shitty job delivering bread to try to make ends meet. And I got through the last few years of college with college loans. I mean, I had college loans to survive. Like, it wasn't just to pay tuition, it was to put food on the table. I remember there were times that I would go get a credit card advance in the ATM machine to get that money to make the credit card payment. I mean, how horrendous is that, you guys? I mean, we had our car repoed. We couldn't afford our car payment. My husband actually had to get a motorcycle after that because they repoed our car. Our motorcycle got stolen. I mean, I had some desperate times. I look back now and I cannot even believe everything that I have gone through to get to where I am today. But you know, the funny thing is, even during those tough times, I still consider myself happy, you know. I still had happy times with my husband. I enjoyed my daughter, you know, my sister lived with us. We had so many happy moments with zero money. So I know money makes things very nice and makes life a lot more comfortable, but I do not think money is necessary for happiness, because I had zero of it. We were totally in debt. We were poor as hell, and I was still happy. You know, I still had a happy family. We were able to laugh and have good times at home. But you know, that was my story while I was going through college. So I dedicated myself really hard in college. I cannot tell you how many times I had a baby crying in one arm and I was trying to do engineering homework, which you guys can imagine, like derivatives and physical chemistry, and sometimes writing programs, you know, computer programs, trying to feed my daughter. I mean, it was freaking insane. But I am so proud to tell you that I made it. You know, I did not let any of that deter me. I always knew that if I did not finish school, my life would never change. So the other thing I want to tell you guys as a message is, if your life sucks right now, what are you doing to change it? Because just doing the same things are not gonna change anything. I knew if I dropped out of school and I went to get some crappy job somewhere, I was writing my destiny right then and there. I was going to work a crappy job and barely make ends meet and live paycheck to paycheck for the rest of my life. So I knew that I had to do something, and I knew that school in my case was my salvation, because I knew it was the only way I was gonna be able to change my life. So, you know, I want you guys to think about, if you are in that situation, because I see a lot of people, even people really close to me, you know, that are going through some tough times, and they are hardworking people, and they work like 2 jobs or 3 jobs. But here's my question to you. Working 3 crappy jobs is not gonna change your life forever. It's not. It's just gonna help you get by. So you have to have a plan, you know. Think about, what is your plan to get out of the rut? And maybe it entails 3, 4 years, 5 years of hardship, but then after that you're home free for the rest of your life. So when I think about, you know, my college years and having no money, and man, it was hard. The homework was hard. I had to study so much. I would sometimes go to school without sleeping. I would go through the night studying for the test the next day with a baby, but I knew that that was temporary. So think about, you know what, maybe you're gonna have to make a huge sacrifice and go through a lot of pain or be really poor for a limited amount of time. But if that is changing your life forever, that is such a small price to pay. Because if you think about, what is 5 years in the big scheme of things, you know, in a life of 70 or 80, it is so worth it, you guys. So a lot of people, you know, talk about, you don't need to be educated to be rich. You don't need to go to college. Absolutely true. You do not need to go to college to be rich. I know a lot of people that are successful, that have businesses and have way more money than me, and do not have a college degree. But here is what I think. First of all, I think there is value in being educated. I really do. You know, it changes how you speak. It changes how you write. It changes how you conduct yourself in front of people. There is value to education. Even if I was a millionaire, and even if my daughter never had to work a day in her life, for sure, and I could leave all of that money for her, I would still want her to get an education. So I do think it changes you as an individual. But also, I think if you do not know what else to do, if you don't have money to start a business, if you don't know what business to start, education, if you pick a good degree, it will guarantee a good life. It will. I mean, that's the bottom line. So if you do not know what else to do, go get a good degree, because you will be taken care of for the rest of your life. I really do believe that, and that was the case for me. Here's my message to you. You know, I think a lot of people that don't have an education say, oh, who gives a damn, you know, you don't need an education. screw that, okay? An education is something you will have with you for the rest of your life. It is something that makes me feel good about myself. It's something that I achieved on my own, that belongs to me and only me, and nobody will ever be able to take that away from me. You know, I finally graduated after all of the hellish times. I stuck with it. I knew that that was the one thing that was going to change my life. And, you know, right out of school, I was able to get a job, a very good paying job. I mean, good paying job for the time, right? I remember my first job, my salary was $50,000 a year. And man, oh man, we thought we were rich. Like, I was offered a job a year before I graduated. So I knew, man, I just gotta finish and I know my life is gonna change forever. So I remember when they called me, you know, to officially give me the offer, I remember jumping in our bed like, I'm gonna be rich, I'm gonna be rich. Because I thought $50,000 a year was so much money. We were living with probably $11,000 a year. You know, I was gonna make all of that just myself. It was freaking awesome. So right out of college, I had a very good paying job with a very big corporation. And you know, my first job as an engineer was not all fun and games. I worked shift work. I worked rotating shifts. So, you know, even if, as a recent graduate, you do not start on top, you guys. I think a lot of people in this generation fail to realize that you have to work for it. You need to put in the time and the effort to become somebody in life, you know, and have a pretty decent life. It entails work and dedication. So my first job, it was like this. I worked 7 days on day shift and I would have 2 days off, then another 7 days on afternoon shift and have 2 days off, and then another 7 days on midnight shift and then have like a day and a half off. My life was a constant rotation of shifts. I remember sometimes I would wake up, I wouldn't know what time of the day was. I was like, oh my God, is it midnight? Is it 3 o'clock? I worked holidays, I worked Christmases, you know. It was a job where I was a supervisor of a very big production plant, and they needed to have a supervisor every day, all the time, and that entailed the holidays. So whatever your shift fell, that's what you had to work. Yeah, and I did that for 3 years, rotating shifts, and it was not easy, but it taught me the foundation for everything I know today. It made me learn so much about how things are made, which is the foundation for my work now is production. So after that, you know, I was promoted, I became a department manager, and then from there I decided to change companies. I wanted to change careers and do big capital projects as an engineer, and I went to a different company where, you know, is the company that I am today. That is something I don't like to reveal, guys, so don't even ask. Like, I like to keep that work piece of my life private, but I work for a very big corporation. And I've been with them for 10 years. I love where I work. I'm very proud of what they do. It's a very ethical company that does all of the right things. And I've grown, you know, with them. My career has progressed. And today I have a very comfortable living. I am not rich by any means. I actually kind of laugh. Some of you guys leave comments like, oh, she's a millionaire. I'm like, I'm not a millionaire. You know, a millionaire, you have your private jet, you know, you're walking with your Lamborghini, that's where you're getting out of. And I am not there yet, but I have plans of getting there for sure. You know, like I told you in my video with Scott, I do have big dreams. So I am not a millionaire, but I do have a very comfortable life. I am very grateful for everything that I have achieved in my life. Nothing came easy. Everything has been really blood, sweat, and tears. And it's funny because my husband is the same way. He has successful businesses, but he has gotten everything he has with hard work, guys. A lot of people look at him and see this good-looking dude with a six-pack and think their life just happened like that, and it's not. His physique is hard work, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. His businesses, he is a workaholic. So you have to work for it in order to get it. You know, like I said before, people are not going to hand it to you. Very few people have examples of that were very lucky where they get discovered and they become this famous singer or this famous artist. But you know, for the regular mortals, guys like me and you, we have to work for it. And you know, it can be done. I have done it. So today I'm very grateful. Like I said, I'm not a trillionaire. I don't have a yacht, but I have a very comfortable life. I'm able to travel a lot. I'm able to buy the things that I love. I don't live paycheck to paycheck, and all of that was thanks to hard work and determination. So I wanted to do this video to hopefully give you guys a little bit of a glimpse, because I think a lot of things we see on social media, you know, look like they come easy, or people come from rich families and they can buy all of these expensive things. You know, I see so many of the bloggers, actually one of my favorite fashion bloggers of all time, I'm not gonna say her name, she's wonderful, she seems to be very thoughtful and very humble, but she came from a very rich family. So yeah, it's easy to do fashion when you started rich, right? And you can buy Chanel every day and Gucci every day. But I wanted to give you guys a story where I am not from a rich family. I did not get things handed to me. I just made it happen myself, you know, and I hope you can see that you can make anything happen yourself. You can make anything in this life come true for you as long as you do the right things. Have a plan, work hard, and I am telling you, you are gonna go beyond your wildest dreams. Because if someone told me 30 years ago in Brazil that, Erica, you're gonna be living in the US, you're gonna have a nice life, you're gonna travel the world, you're gonna have a wonderful husband, a beautiful daughter, I would think that they were crazy, you know? So I know that if I was able to reach my dreams and beyond, you guys are too. So I have to thank you for watching, and I know I talked a lot, but you guys know I am a complete talker. I could stay here all day talking with you, but I thank you for the opportunity. I am honored that you take the time to hang out with me. I hope this is motivation for you guys, and it helped you learn a little bit more about me and how I came to be where I am today. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you like the videos, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I really appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.